Good afternoon. As the introduction was, my name is Michael Maher and I'm the CEO of the Aged Care Development Network, ACDN. We are a membership association that provides workforce accreditation services to both providers with information and support and business intelligence, as well as actually running a membership body for people who work in age, community and disability. My presentation will go for about 30 minutes so that there is plenty of time for Q&A, because my aim is to generate questions. I'm going to talk in general terms today. Now, some of what I talk about will be relevant for you, and some of it you'll say, hey, we're already doing that. Don't imply that we're doing that. Please remember, I'm talking in general terms. It doesn't have to be site specific. What I always enjoy when I get up and challenge a room, for want of a better term, is when I hear what I call sucking air through teeth. It usually goes something like, what will the department think of that? Or how does that go with the standards? So before we put some of these ideas out there, let me get this out straight away. We have a very good advisory team around us. We're very privileged, from CEOs to facility managers and everything in between, especially from the HR area. A number of those people are actually accreditors for the agency, and everything that we're building and pushing through gets pushed by them. And their most common comment to us is, the actor's got nothing to do with this. And us as accreditors, who kind of enforce that when we go into the facilities, our opinion is that anything that helps them to achieve compliance easier, we're all for it. So please don't have evidence for evidence of evidence. Don't hide behind the act. Today, please keep an open mind. The aim of this afternoon is putting information out because we want to work with you to grow and strengthen the entire industry, to build a sustainable aged care sector with a great customer experience. As I said at the start, I know a lot of these things won't apply to your facilities because they're all perfect. So keep an open mind. 2 years ago, our organisation conducted a survey through a fair part of the industry, choosing small, medium and large facilities from private, public and non-profit. We ended up interviewing 30 CEOs, directors of people and culture, COOs, executive directors of nursing, and 200 staff from across those different facilities. The first question was, what are your greatest challenges? Here are the answers. Finding quality, right fit carers was number one across everyone. Modernising the workforce, retention of care staff, maintaining sustainable growth in relation to carers usually, and the rising cost of labour. So, all your greatest risks are workforce. And they all come back down to risk, time, and cost.
Excuse me, do you have a Dr. Pen and ingredients? It's impossible for me.
Workforce. Is that any better? It's not exactly a dark pen. I apologise. Workforce, risk, time and cost. They're all workforce related. The challenge is most of your staff, not because they're bad people, but they don't really care about your risk, your time and your costs. They care about how they're treated. They care about how much money they take home each week, and they care about their working experiences or conditions. The old adage, they don't care what you know until they know you care, is alive and well in aged care. In 7 years and hundreds of facilities, what we've seen that if you want to build care factor, you need to build pride and confidence in your team. So I get a black one. Pride and confidence. If you don't build pride and confidence, you don't get care factor. Without care factor, you don't get to lower your risk, save time and save cost. We're evolving rapidly. We're evolving from a cottage industry. And we started evolving in, I guess the furthest back I can go is 1997 with the Aged Care Act. And we've had subsequent legislative reform since then, all the way to 2014 and the Living Longer, Living Better. This has contributed to the speed of change in this industry, moving us rapidly from a cottage industry to a professional sector. This white building here was part of St James Primary School in Newcastle until 1980. My elder sister went to primary school there. But when I started in 1981, they'd built a new St James Primary School in the next suburb, but my bus stop was opposite this white building. In fact, the entire campus used to be white buildings like this. It became an aged care home, became a nursing home back in those days. And slowly the white buildings were replaced by those lovely brick things over there. It's now a uniting site in Garden Suburb in Newcastle. But I sat there and watched that, and I watched the kind of people who worked there, and I, obviously as a 6-year-old, I didn't understand, but looking back now, they were mainly nurses and volunteers, mums, who worked 9 to 3. That's where this all started. It's been 36 years since that change. It took another 20 years beyond that date before we actually had a class of worker called carer. And since then, the only constant has been change. When an industry starts to professionalise, one of the key things they do is create industry bodies. When you graduate with an accounting degree, you can practice as an accountant, but you're restricted in your practice until you satisfy the mandates of Certified Practicing Accountants, CPA, and you become a member and you can have the post-nominal CPA. Until then, you can't sign off on certain types of work. Similar to becoming a solicitor. Though you graduate with a law degree, you are not admitted as a solicitor until you join the Law Society and you finish your articles and you meet the requirements of being admitted as a solicitor. Once you do that, you can resign from being a member of the Law Society. You don't have to pay for their newsletter and their annual or access to their CPD, but you actually must maintain your registration on their books. Engineers Australia is the same. You can graduate as an engineer and you can practice as an engineer, but you are restricted in your practice unless you are an accredited member at the different levels held by and accredited by Engineers Australia. Though we have peak bodies for the providers in this sector, we don't have a professional body for the majority of workers. And I just want to touch quickly on the difference between industry accreditation and government registration, being healthcare. What we're not talking about here is an APRA-style registration. Usually when government does it, they don't know how to do anything on the cheap and it becomes expensive, cumbersome, burdensome to you as operators, and it's very hard to modernise, it's hard to change. The challenges we're going through with the Aged Care Act and the standards. Whereas on the other side, accreditation is usually done by the industry, for the industry. These three being prime examples. When we work with or work within a provider, we use a system known as the intersection strategy. It is used across many industries and it's developed by a business lady in Sydney called Tracy Angwin. We've found that the key to successful workforce accreditation is getting this strategy right. Workforce issues generally fall into one of three categories. People, processes, technology. Any workforce management setup which is inefficient or can't maintain compliance data has a problem in one or more of these three areas. And as this is a workforce accreditation system that is meant to support you in managing your workforce, we're using the same intersection strategy to build a workforce accreditation association. But why do you need all three? Because if you have great people and modern technology, but if your processes are poor, you likely have to do some things manually, which results in an inefficient workforce management operation with high delivery costs. There are often errors because the processes aren't rigorous enough to identify potential errors when they come up. If you have solid processes and good people, but poor technology, you're probably suffering from poor governance because you don't have the technology to run comprehensive reporting that gives you a true picture of your operation. If you have modern technology and solid processes but you don't have good people, well, this can be the highest risk and the most expensive. If your team isn't focused on quality control, ongoing quality control, you can have a high error rate which can expose your business to risk in a wide variety of areas. But when you get all three areas operating efficiently, the organisation will save time, save money, and lower risk. That's because the exponential effect here is that 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3. It equals 5. So, our industry, we are professionalising. We are evolving as a sector. As I said a little earlier, when that happens in other sectors, in other industries, the community at large and the people who work in the industry demand more of the members of this industry. We expect a lot from our people. So they go and create an industry association, a professional body like CPA, the Law Society, Engineers Australia. A body that can oversee a series of workforce accreditation standards that workers can be held accountable against. Back to the survey. One of the questions we asked was, do you foresee the need for carers to be accredited and have a governing body? And a massive 71% said yes. The other numbers have disappeared off the page, but this unsure was about 14% and no was 7%. So the no's were not there. The no's really were the minority. The aim in this exercise is not to build a burdensome compliance system. The aim is to give you a structure that simplifies and standardises what needs to be done, giving all of the parties involved the tools to do so. It also provides the mechanisms for lowering risk in the sector, the byproduct of which it'll usually save you time and money at the same time. It should also help us to attract, engage and retain the best people possible to come and work in this sector. It needs to be supported by sensible processes and sustainable governance, underpinned by modern technology that simplifies and strengthens the whole apparatus. To accredit people, you need standards to compare them with. The new workforce accreditation standards are certainly still with the committee in draft form, but I have two here which should give you an idea. Draft Standard 1. Aged, community and disability workers have the relevant skills and qualifications to undertake the role for which they are employed. That makes sense. How do you prove that? Number one, the employee holds a relevant AQTF nationally accredited qualification in that field, such as a Certificate 3 in aged care. Again, it makes sense. But that's not actually mandated anywhere. That is industry common practice. But it's not written down anywhere. You don't have to do it. But as we've all agreed, it does make sense. It's probably something we might like to write down, codify. Number three, the employee maintains records of their qualifications CPD which can be produced for audit. Except for the nurses who work for you, do you know any of your other staff would actually keep a register of what they do? I meet a lot of carers and I say, where did you do your Cert 3? And they go, don't know. That is the most common response I get. It's not pushing a lot back onto them, but it's saying, you really are a healthcare professional. It really behoves you to keep a track of what you've done, where you've worked, and the different skills you've amassed during that time. Draft Standard number 2. Employers of aged, community and disability workers maintain a register of required regulatory checks including, but not limited to, police checks, working with children checks, with evidence of renewal every 3 years. Number one, you're probably doing by the personnel record. But number two, Evidence of competency register and defined scope of practice. Example, endorsed enrolled nurse, peg feeding competency, catheter replacement competency. I would hazard a guess that most places I go to don't have that. But again, it's something you really should. The aim of these standards might just be to put meat on the bone for what is already written in the Act or in the standards, or it might just be industry common practice or best practice that we're writing down, such as having a Cert 3 in aged care. They are meant to support you in your day-to-day operations. So, where do we start? We want to start with the idea that in order to build pride and confidence, we had to give the workers the tools to achieve that. So, we created an online passport where they can track all of their details, contact details, compliance, education, history, employment experience, languages, hobbies. We want them to be able to look back at this record and see how far they have come in the sector. They can also use this as a CV. This is a private record, but they can copy and paste a public link and send it through to you as a CV. You can request, in fact, some of the facilities we work with request that all CVs come in this format. It has given them a paint-by-numbers version of building a CV for those who don't speak English or English as a second language. It also means you can keyword search. We need someone with this qualification over 5 years and with this language. You can keyword search when it comes through. It's got everything you need. We wanted a one-stop shop for members to be able to see everything they needed in this sector. So we placed that passport on a dashboard. Workers had also flagged that a number of their employers now had employee kiosks. But since the average worker works for 3 concurrent employers and each of them has a URL, username and password, which they forget, they weren't really using the employee kiosk. So we made it really easy just to drop the employee kiosk on the dashboard. It literally is adding in a URL and it pops up. And they can have as many of these as they want down the page. So if they have 3 employers, 2 agencies and a member of a peak body, they can line them up down the page. One click and they can access all of their different employee kiosks. Survey says, do you believe that mandatory training needs to be more clearly defined than it is currently? 84% yes. I'll take that as an industry yes. If carers had an accreditation or membership body, should it be able to track mandatory training and other CPD? 81% yes. 9% said it should be able to enforce it. But if we just went with tracking it for now. So we designed inside that dashboard a learning and development wallet that connects to a learning and development marketplace which contains courses from a wide variety of e-learning providers. There are free subjects, there are MOOCs in there, massive open online courses that are free. There are low-cost individual access courses as well as your normal e-learning costs. Workers have said how they had to repeat the same subjects at each employer each year. Sure, there are site-specific subjects, but 70% of mandatory training is just for the industry. It's not site-specific. Imagine if providers could share that kind of data between you, not only from a worker's point of view, but also the cost and time savings for you. Another challenge is when a worker left an employer, they lost their record of their entire education history. So the Learning and Development Wallet is free for any individual who works in the industry so they can track all of their education. They can self-enter and they can import verified, completed data from a wide variety of e-learning providers. Survey says, are your personnel records paper-based or do you use an HRAs? 1/3 of the industry uses an HRAs and 2/3 of them aren't happy with it. The other 2/3 don't use an HRAs. They are mangling between complete manual paper or running a kind of personnel record out of the payroll system and the rest is done on paper. Research shows that without an HRAS, you're exposed to greater risk of manual data error. And you're probably missing out on business intelligence that could help you to make informed decisions. I met a director of people and culture recently and he was frustrated because he'd just come into an organisation, everything was done on a gut call. He said, we go to a meeting, they say, we've got high turnover right now. And he said, how do you know? Oh, my gut. He said, we're a $500 million organisation. I think we can get better than that. The problem is most HRAs systems are not specifically designed for aged care. They're either too expensive or too complicated or both. So we designed a HRAS that is specifically designed for the aged and community care sector. All of the data held in this platform is held by Microsoft Azure, which meets Australian privacy standard. The primary copy is in Melbourne, the backup copy is in Sydney. It does not leave Australia. It is algorithms that track standard 1.6, human resource management, and standard 1.3, education and staff development. It creates reports on demand for each of those standards. It also tracks helpful data like languages and hobbies, as recently we've seen a rise in meeting very specific requests, such as we would like a male, Muslim, Arabic-speaking carer, or a piano-playing Italian carer. It's getting very specific. It also automates the process of setting a new worker up in your system, because when the passport that I showed you earlier, when they accept an offer of employment, you can actually import their entire passport into the HRAS, which will then set them up in payroll, which will then set them up in rostering. So you're getting rid of a lot of double entry of data. CareHQ. Information sharing. When a new worker accepts your offer of employment and privacy has been given, you make them an offer and they've accepted it. CareHQ will download the individual's passport into the HR system, CareHQ. And once that connection has been made, CareHQ will continue to automatically connect back to the passport. So if they get married and they update their next of kin, it'll update in your HR system. If they do education, both RTO or mandatory training elsewhere, it'll update in your system automatically and in real time. Some managers told us that they need another technology platform like they need a hole in the head. So we created a single homepage called CareHQ. It looks a little like the same one, the dashboard that we built for the individual workers. You save it as your homepage, and when you log into CareHQ each morning, you have all of your platforms on the one page. HRAS, payroll, rostering, recruitment, client management, everything. All you need to do, as I did earlier, is one click and it'll actually open just as another tab for you. Same as adding employee kiosks to workers' dashboards, you can add as many of your other platforms that you have down the page. CareHQ contains single sign-on technology. So logging into the home page will actually log you into each of your applications. When an employee leaves, CareHQ login for that facility is turned off for them. So this is site-specific. They log in as a worker, it's one URL they go to. Logging into CareHQ for your site is site-specific. So if they leave you, that facility is turned off, functionality is turned off in line with your IT policy. CareHQ is part of a marketplace which has a whole variety of different technology providers in it, allowing you to plug and play depending on the needs of your facility, of your group, such as police checks, reference checks, medical checks, and mandatory training. You can build a best-of-breed network, including both new services as well as existing technology that you already have in your facility. So the network can interface with your existing platforms as well as building that additional functionality. CareHQ and the marketplace is the technology that really underpins the Workforce Accreditation organisation. How it works. As Jennifer moves between different employers and different aspects of her career, it all tracks back to her record in CareHQ. As she completes training, both RTO delivered or mandatory training, it all goes back to her central record in CareHQ. It tracks everybody. As she updates police checks, medical checks, ARPA registration, federal government student identifier, etc., it is all tracked back to her one record in CareHQ. CareHQ then shares that information with interested parties. Obviously, as it's Jennifer's record, she gets an updated copy on her passport. When she commenced employment for each of her different employers, part of her acceptance of the employment was connecting her passport record to her employer's HRAs via the CareHQ marketplace, updating her records in real time with you automatically. And that's just the start of what this marketplace does. What does this all mean for you? By building the association, we create the place for people from across the sector to gather. It won't happen overnight. But once we have the space and the structure, it will grow. Even in the temporary structure we have now, we have over 10,000 workers from across the industry. Probably some of your staff, actually. The workforce accreditation standards will put structure around expectations of workers, processes and governance for all involved to be able to refer to, both as a carrot and as a stick. Finally, the technology makes it easy. Easy for workers and employers to use, easy to share information, easy to gain insight, business intelligence for your organisation. The bigger picture is that all these multiple parts work together to create pride and confidence in their role. They take pride because they're part of an industry association where they get newsletters which talk about how big this industry is and how powerful it is and that it affects every Australian. Being able to have access to a wider variety of education and see clear records of how far they have come in this industry builds confidence in their skills. So there are less mistakes and better outcomes from their work. That is what we call care factor. This is the underlying aim of this entire process in setting up an association for workers. Because once they have care factor, you start to see lower risk in your operations. The whole process of management gets easier, which saves you time, and ultimately this efficient model saves you cost. It's a win-win situation. The process to launch this association is well underway, and the team who are writing the standards are also well into their work. We look forward to working with you in building a sustainable aged care sector with a great customer experience. I will take questions in a minute. I just want to say that a number of you have noticed the books on the table called Care Factor. That's a little guide I wrote for facility managers a couple of years ago because I was tired of arriving in facilities and the facility manager said, I've got no time to be a leader because I'm so busy putting out spot fires. But there was no discussion of team building. And I was trying to send a message saying if you build a team, you won't get so many spot fires. Then you can get out of your office and you can be a leader. So there's one on the table for everyone. If anyone has missed out, please come and see myself or Oriana. We also have a table in the room over there. If you want to get involved in what we're doing, please come and see me. We're about to go into afternoon tea and I'll also be here tomorrow. If you want to be kept in the loop, come and see me. If you want to learn specifically about what other services are involved in the CareHQ marketplace, on Thursday morning there is a workshop. The 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. workshop is purely on that. It's about all these different companies and services that are working together so that you can share data, lower risk, save costs, save time, share workforce information as providers. If you just want to be kept in the loop, come and see me and give me a card and I'll add you to the list that we send newsletters out of updates. Are there any questions? Wow. Maybe I factored in too much question time.
Michael, I've just got one question.
Sure.
Can site or organisation-specific content be uploaded for like online orientation and those sorts of things?
Very much so. So the partner we have is called Quintal. They operate the Learning and Development Wallet. You can make a video which is site-specific or a group-specific. Hi, welcome to Bupa. Here's a site within it. Here are the benefits for working for us. As a non-for-profit, we have a salary sacrificing program. We have all these different things. You can make all that. You can have it from a very manual process through to a really complicated one which has a photo or video from each of the management team inside a company or within a facility. So when a new person starts, they go through that And when they walk in the halls, they can identify the Don or the Triple C or their wing manager or something like that. Yeah.
Fantastic. No other questions?
With the dashboard, can you integrate your own rostering system with?
Yes.
So if you've already got a rostering system that works for you, will it interface and integrate?
Very much so. All providers use different technology. People swear by different HRAs, different payroll, different rostering systems. And if we came in and said, no, you've got to change to ours, we wouldn't be getting very far very quickly. So we built it that it's really plug and play. Think of a circle and you can plug in all the different services you need. A standalone facility needs a different to a group of 20 or 30 facilities in a group. A non-for-profit versus a private, the size of a place. So you can plug and play whatever you need. Yes, Cynthia.
What's your underpinning business model? Is the employee your member and then your companies are members? Do you want to just touch on?
Sure.
Yeah.
So there is a non-for-profit association being formed for all the members. I was in Sydney 2 weeks ago for Healthcare Week, meeting with CEOs from a variety of organisations who are aware of this. I'm looking for people who are innovative, people who are knocking down doors going, we've got to modernise and change and be innovative in aged care. They will form the inaugural board of this association. We then provide services to that to underpin the technology and all the other bits. That answer your question? Not really? Okay. Individuals are members, providers are clients.
Okay.
Cost of CareHQ is in the ballpark of $500 a month for a standalone, for a facility. The aim of it was it needs to cover its costs. It's not a huge money-making venture. It's meant to be achievable. We were talking with a facility last week who's in Cobar in New South Wales. They struggle because the mines take their staff. Either the mine salary is too good or the husband's earning too much in the mine, the wife doesn't need a job. Because it's Cobar, there aren't many agencies to call upon. They don't have much disposable income. We need to be able to underpin those guys as much as we need to do in the big cities. So it's as cost effective as we can make it. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.